Hello. I'm here once again to talk about perfection, and that perfection lives inside of you, inside of all of us. And we are perfect just as we are in essence. We are essentially good. Um, there is a lot of other things going on, and we're going to discuss that. One of the best lessons I learned in recent years, maybe about 10 years ago, I was fussing about the events of the world, the politics, and all the rest of it, which is a big interest of mine. And I was complaining to a spiritual advisor about this. And she told me, okay, all right, that's enough. Here is your mantra. It is what it is. I didn't like that because what do you mean it is what it is? It kind of sucks the way it is. And how does that work? But um, you know, I somehow sensed it made sense, but I hadn't understood it quite. So after a while, I contemplated on it is what it is. And it kind of connected with another thought I had even previously, which is, well, as a thought experiment, what if everything is perfect, just the way it is? So it's beyond that. It is what it is, worked for me in creating more inner peace and get away from, oh, I want this to be this way and that way, and why are the why are the politicians so bad and wars and everything else? Well, wait a minute. It is what it is. And what if things that happen in the world are perfect just the way they are? In the same way that we are each internally, in essence, in our souls, are perfect just the way we are. Well, okay. So gradually I began to understand this, and it made a big difference because I was able to handle a lot of things in my life that I hadn't been able to handle before with a sense of peace and a sense of acceptance. So, oh, well, if it is what it is and things are perfect just the way they are, well, maybe my life was actually perfect. And so I was able to process, I guess you'd call it, my early childhood and different things that happened to me and different things that I did that I kind of didn't like. I mean, I haven't been exactly an angel in my life. So I began to look at that with a different eye instead of feeling guilty about it. Although I think a layer of guilt still remained and still remains to some, it's like an echo. I was able to process this stuff and come back to a sense that, yes, things are perfect just the way they are. And that brings us with a difficult problem. Well, okay, if it is what it is, why can't we just accept everything and just hang out and stay in bed or whatever, get high, okay. Why do we do a moral life? Why do we pursue virtue? We are in this body, in this culture, and we need to express ourselves fully. And as we touch internally our divine nature, then we begin to compare what life is like in the outside world with our own perfect inner nature. And we begin to operate in such a way that we can see what needs to be done, whether it's washing the dishes or giving people something, money or help or whatever it is. We can begin to see this more clearly instead of out of guilt, out of obligations. We see that there is a harmony and a rhythm in life that we can participate in. And all we have to do is find our place, our place. I guess place is the best place, the best place to be. Okay, say what is our function in the world? We need to, and once we touch that energy, we begin to understand who we are, what it is that we need to do, and what our place in the world is. One of the things that was always difficult, and it's difficult for a lot of people in the Gospels, Jesus tells us that we should love our neighbor as ourselves. Pretty damn hard right there. Well, of course, what he meant was that being ourselves is really the same as the other person, our neighbor, whoever is around us, other humans. They have the same self. Again, it's not exactly the same because, as I said in some other videos, we are uniquely who we are. So the most unique part of us, the most diverse part of it, the most not like anyone else, is that essence that is connected to everyone else. And that essence is the same in everyone. Their uniqueness, my uniqueness, they're the same thing, just expressed in this particular body, in this particular place, in this particular civilization. So that is perfect. I am perfect just the way I am. You are perfect just the way you are, because we're this, and you're unique. You're not like me. You're the same as me. You have the same consciousness as me, and we all share that, but we're all very, very, very different. And in a sense, the more different we are, the more connected we are. The more completely ourselves we are, the more connected we are. And that's what Jesus meant when he said, love thy neighbor as thyself. Of course, he knew that. That was where he was coming from. That was his whole point of being alive. But the other thing he said later, love your enemies. Whoa, now that's even tougher. But because how do you do that? What if someone's doing terrible things? I know that they're the same as me. They're doing terrible things to me. So why is that? Why should I love them? Well, in the martial arts that I studied, we bow to our opponent when we're engaging in a whatever technique or fight or whatever you want to call it. Then we bow because we know that our opponent is going to show us the bad technique we have. They're going to show us how we're missing the mark. We're not quite balanced, or we don't put our hands up, or we put them in the wrong place, or we're not centered, or our weight is distributed in a clumsy way. Our opponent, if he or she is any good, will show us that by, you know, even if we win the match, they're still showing us what we lack. So adversity, as in our opponent, our other person in front of us, by loving them, by accepting that situation of being an opponent, because they're there to teach me, I can bow to them and love them because then I can see what they do. I can notice their technique. I can notice my technique failing or succeeding, and my attention is focused. I'm not like angry. Uh, there's some, there's some virtue perhaps in some situations of getting angry, but the ideal is to be centered and calm enough to be able to look at all angles. The movement, whether the movement's this way or that, the footwork, so when you're not angry, when you're calm, you have room in your consciousness to observe what they're doing. And this can be in any sport. And it can be in any situation in life, whether it's a close relationship with a mate, or your children or your parents or whatever. When you find that inner calm, that inner connection with who you are, and that uniqueness of who you are is exactly the same in your opponent who's giving you a hard time for whatever reasons. They may be really good reasons, but you won't know that unless you're centered and calm and have the faith that indeed you will find out what's going on here. So appreciate your opponents, your enemies, the people who are giving you a hard time when you're in the middle of an argument. Appreciate that you're engaging in a match where you have the opportunity to observe your weaknesses and your opponent's weaknesses and embrace the whole situation without being in denial. Oh, I wish she didn't say that to me. Oh, I'm offended. Okay, you're offended. Now, where's that going to get you? Yes, you can be offended. Yes, you can be bothered and agitated. But when you're centered, you'll be able to understand how to deal with it. You'll be able to see all angles of the situations. So you'll find a way, hopefully a peaceful way, how to handle it. When you're both engaged in a competition, like a match or a, a tennis game or whatever it is, that's that situation there will give you a chance to see things clearly if you are centered in who you are, or at least, I mean, that's a lot to ask for, but at least know that you have a center, that you have a soul, that there is a place to go, a refuge where you can be centered and observe. You don't have to every single fake thing or whatever they do, you're not going to get so easily thrown because you're going to watch all aspects of the situation. So this is important. So ad- adversity is the same. When you have a terrible situation, you've lost your job, you blew your money, you had a breakup, your kids are like taking drugs, bad drugs. Well, what are you going to do? No, you can't indulge in all that. It's, in fact, even those kinds of situations demand your full attention. And you can only have that full attention when you're centered. Not that I'm always centered. I go off balance. As I was taught, when you get thrown, you get back up, you center, and you're ready to go without going, oh, I was thrown. I really messed up. No, no. You learn in the martial art I practice. One of them that I practice was that you can't afford to do that. You have to be centered and be ready to handle the next technique your opponent will throw at you, even if you blow it or get knocked down or thrown or whatever. Get back up, get centered. That practice is very important. Don't dwell on, oh my God, I did this, because in this minute of that, very second that you have that situation happen to you, you need to be aware. So you don't have time, like say in a game of basketball, which I played in my younger days a lot. You can't go, oh man, I missed that shot. Oh, God. Ooh. No, you don't have time for that. You have to get back. You have to get back on defense. You have to be really focused and make sure that other player is not going to, blow right back by you by complaining or being frustrated or whatever. So this is important. So in the in the Bible, there is the book of Job, which starts out as this Job character has everything he wants. He's in perfect shape. His sons and daughters are well placed. Everybody, they're all rich and everything like that. And then the God and God has his what they call it in the Bible, the court. Sometimes it's translated differently. The sons of God and God are together, or some translations it's the angels, but I think the accurate translations it's the sons of God. So they're all hanging out here with God, and Satan is there as well. So he says, well, Job's doing so great. Of course he's going to worship you and think everything's great, but what if he didn't have all that stuff? What then? He will deny you. You've given him everything he wants, and he'll deny you. And so the whole book of Job, which is one of the most interesting books in the entire Old Testament, I think, is about what happens when he loses everything, when he's sitting there and in pain, and he's got boils all over his body, he's lost everything. Well, he just says, okay, that it is what it is. And God is still great. Okay, so that is a very important teaching. Now, this is a symbolic story. It's not just, accurate that there was actually a guy named Job that happened to, although very well might. I interpret it in my own way, which is that I think that the initially he was doing so great, and that was in one life. And then in the next life, he came back and every possible horrible thing happened to him. And he still had faith in God. And God, as I've described, is something within you. And as Jesus has described, it's something within you. And because he had that faith and he was able to center in that, all the afflictions he had, they bothered him. It wasn't like, oh, whippy, but he was able to center and to see things clearly. And then there were a series of discussions, and it's all very interesting. And I recommend reading that. And but at the end of the day, of course, he was rewarded. So at the end of the day, he had all that he had lost and more. Well, what does that mean? Well, the story is that when you connect with your soul, when you're embodied in your own, not just your soul, but your body and your situation in life, who you are, who your parents are, who your grandparents are, the culture you're in, the religion you were brought up in or that you practice, whatever it is, the job you have or have had, the relationships, everything else, everything is there. It is perfect the way it is, whether and horrible things that happened, accidents and broken bones, whatever, there is a sense that it's there in order for you to practice being centered. So if something happens, well, what are you going to do? It is what it is. And I'm not still sure that it's perfect in every way, but I get that perfection. It's like a message that came to me many years ago, but I thought, oh, that's ridiculous. I just thought it's a great thought experiment just for fun. For example, every morning around dawn, one of my dogs barks, bark, 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 bark. And so I have to get up and I have to get dressed. And whether I'm tired, when I went to bed late or early, it didn't matter. She barks every morning around dawn. So I get up and let her out. Well, oh, that's terrible. I like being up late, actually, always have. But now I have to get up every morning early. So is that good? It's not comfortable. I wish I could just lay around because I mean, I don't have a job anymore. So I'm retired, so I don't have to necessarily do anything. So I complain, but internally I go, "Oh," but I've worked at it so that I now embrace it. Once I get up, I'm do my thing, get ready, make coffee, do this, let them out, walk with them. But it's beautiful because I get to be out in nature at a time that's very nurturing. Waking up at dawn is very nurturing. So I bow to my opponent, my dog, one of my dogs that does that, who's very demanding in her way. Good dog, but demanding. So I bow to that and say, okay, I'll embrace that. I'll see what's positive about that because I can benefit from this. And that's the idea of this sort of spiritual practice, which is to accept things as they are, accept the fact that, most of the ruling class are nasty pieces of shit and half of them are Satanists. Who knows? I don't know. But certainly we are now being faced with radical evil, real evil. And certainly the sort of little bit of the surface of that is in the Epstein files, if you look at them closely. I've known that for decades, and basically the setup. I don't didn't specifically know about that. I've read about Epstein and his lineage and where he comes from and who the connections are to him. And Whitney Webb, One Nation Under Blackmail, which is an excellent book to understand a bit of not just Epstein, but the whole ruling class kind of thing. So, but still, it's not a good thing what Epstein was doing, whether it be his financial crimes, which were pretty great, or his crimes against children. Fine. I mean, But you need to accept the fact that showing that in a country that's basically tends to be very optimistic, we need to be more sophisticated in understanding the nature of evil. And the Epstein situation is teaching us bit by bit the nature of evil and how our rulers, particularly the billionaires and the politicians who work for the billionaires, how they function and what their connections are. We need to accept that. We need to look at that, though. It is dark. It is very dark. As I discussed, I think in my last video, very, very dark. But whoa, don't get overwrought with that. It's evil has always existed, at least on the earth, as far as recorded civilization goes. I would say it's a little more now. I think that the fact that evil exists is in order to bring out the good. As I said, understanding yourself more deeply through opposition. I have an opponent. I'm in a fight. I'm well. Guess what? Where are my fists? It's not in my face, so I get hit in the face. I'll learn to keep my fists up, whatever technique you want to use. So now I know. So I learned a lot from the nature of difficulty, or in our case, culturally evil in our culture, by facing fully the corruption and the evil and the wars and the people who want wars, want to limit human population through diseases, certain disease we know about, whether it's through war, whatever it is, even nuclear war is possible because the evil is so great in our current rulers that that's a possibility. But not, you know, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen, but this is a possibility we need to entertain. And when we entertain that, then we can and accept it, say it is what it is. Okay, evil exists. This is how it looks. The more you do that, the more you can find yourself, the evil inside it, because we each have a little bit of Satan in each of us, just as we have God within us. There is an aspect of Satan, which I will discuss in another video. So we understand that we can understand our negative nature through the outer nature of evil that's really, really obvious and increasingly obvious in our own culture now. So we say, okay, great, thank you. Now I can begin the process of understanding my own tendencies, my selfishness, whatever it is. It's like we have it. So let's be grateful. In fact, speaking of gratitude, Rumi, the Persian poet Rumi, Jalaluddin Rumi, who wrote the best poetry that I know of, a Sufi poet, he said that the greatest virtue is gratitude. Think about that. Okay, until next time, be whole, be yourself. Bye.